Hello everyone, I'm back again with another video. Today, I want to talk about something that I've never really emphasized as much as I'm going to today. I talk about this oftentimes in my videos about how I've arrived at the conclusion that carnivore is the appropriate dietary intervention for human beings to adopt for optimal health, the most conducive approach to achieving optimal health according to your genotypical maximum, so to speak. And I've covered why I've arrived at that conclusion as well, but not as explicitly as I will in this video. Most people will talk about how a diet is appropriate for human beings and optimal for human beings based on science. Human nutrition science, as they say. And the word science has some authoritative tag to it. It makes people listen to you more. It makes people believe it to be more, well, authoritative and therefore more correct, as if those are, necessarily intertwined when oftentimes it's the exact opposite. And the thing is about human nutrition science, it is not science in the first place. Science requires control. You have to have an intervention and you have to compare that to a control group. That's how this works. The thing about human beings, though, which are what the subjects are in human nutrition science, is that they cannot be controlled for because we are all genotypically and phenotypically different. If you were to try to control for human beings and do a controlled study on human beings, you would have to take at least two genetically identical twins, both phenotypically and genotypically identical, separate them at birth, put them into two metabolic ward lock-in rooms, observe them over their entire lives if attempting to infer lifelong health outcomes, 40 years for 40-year-long health outcomes, etc., and control for every single variable, including the time they wake up, the time they go to bed, their stress levels, their hormone levels, the time they eat, etc., etc. You can obviously see that this is implausible for obvious reasons, but it's also unethical. It would not get passed an ethics committee, wouldn't get approved, and also it would be exorbitantly expensive. So that is not to be relied on. And so therefore people will rely on poorly randomized, completely uncontrolled trials / interventional studies that usually have appalling statistical power due to their sample size, and the signal to noise ratio due to the sample size is also extremely uninformative, to put it lightly. It renders the study uninformative. It is abysmal. And yet there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of papers, I mean millions at this point, in the human nutrition science sphere that purport to be able to assert what is optimal for humans to eat and how they should live as well. But I'm here to say that that's not true, and we need to expand our horizons. We need to talk about how to actually infer what is and what is not indicated for our physiology, appropriate for us to be consuming. And that is where we arrive at really the four central tenets of carnivore, so to speak, at least mine. And I'm here to talk to you about what those are so that you can articulate them to other people after you fully understand them. Of course, that's the second purpose of this, is for you guys to actually understand why I arrive at these conclusions and then allow you guys to be able to articulate this to other people as well that are curious or doubtful about this dietary intervention and or approach. So the first one, stable nitrogen and carbon isotope analysis. Now, what are these? Well, this is basically a study method that analyzes the collagen from the long bones of ancient human remains that precede the agricultural revolution. That's very important. The agricultural revolution being where we really started to ramp up the consumption of plants to any significant degree at all. And they analyze this collagen with mass spectroscopy. They isolate the protein from the collagen and they combust it, and they measure the isotope ratios of carbon and nitrogen. And from that ratio, they can infer what diet those remains were consuming. The signature of your food remains in the collagen of your bones. That is an absolute fact. It even remains in your molars, in your teeth. So when these are done on ancient human remains that precede the agricultural revolution all across the world, so we're also controlling for region as well, we're ensuring that this wasn't just localized to one region of the world, repeatedly, and to a point of predictability, you see that we had higher carnivore ratings, or at least have higher carnivore ratings therefore, than that of lions, wolves, foxes, and hyenas, which not only means that we were consuming more meat in terms of the ratio of animal products and animal material to plant material than other animals, but we were also most likely consuming them as well. We see people in Africa, even today, taunting lions and stealing their food, not necessarily killing them, and I'm also not necessarily advocating for that behavior, but it does show that we have the capacity to tactically contend with these animals, and we have maintained that. It is not a new thing. We've been doing it for hundreds of thousands of years, and in fact millions of years if you include proto-humans that preceded our current speciation, that being Homo sapiens sapien. So that's the first part of this picture. It is not the complete part of this picture. It must be combined with a second tenet, or a second fact, in order for that to mean anything more than an appeal to tradition fallacy. The second tenet is a fact of cellular biology, that being the fact of evolution. People often misunderstand what evolution actually means. People overread evolution. Evolution does not say, so to speak, that human beings came from monkeys. That is not what it says. That is a theory based on the fact of evolution. Evolution implies and indicates one thing and one thing only. Genes evolve under the environment in which you place them, more permanently over longer periods of time, having experienced and withstood a certain stimulus constantly over time. First, it starts with phenotypical changes that are more acute changes, and the more that stimulus is encountered over very long periods of time, those traits will then become permanent. That is how evolution works. With that fact in mind, that means that any trend away from what our genes have withstood dietarily, environmentally, more broadly, for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, is risky in terms of our health, and particularly the health effects that it would have on us. It will have on us. It is a risk. It is the most indicated approach to be eating the way that our genes have evolved for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. Adaptation is the essence of evolution. So you combine those two central tenets and you get carnivore already. However, we can go even further to a biochemical fact known as the Randle cycle. The Randle cycle is basically a biochemical mechanism that describes and explains the interaction between fatty acids, fat, and carbohydrates, primarily glucose, in a cell. The pathways by which glucose, the prototypical carbohydrate, and long-chain fatty acids, the prototypical fat, are metabolized or are used to create ATP from these substrates actively cross-inhibit one another in cells. There is speculation as to whether this can cause inflammation. I strongly believe that it does. It is invariably associated with inflammation. That being, a mixed diet is invariably associated with inflammation that has a significant amount of fatty acids and glucose or other carbohydrates contained within it. So that's one thing. But they absolutely cross-inhibit one another, and the inference right there is that you should be consuming one macronutrient primarily and consuming a diet that is very poor in the other, and that's it. So you can either have high fatty acids, high fat diet with very low to zero carbohydrates, or the exact opposite. Now, you combine that with the other two tenets, you can sort of already infer what I'm implying right now. However, that fact on its own, that tenet on its own, does not tell us or indicate which diet is, well, appropriate. Is it the vegan, high carbohydrate, very low to no fat diet? Or is it the carnivorous ketogenic diet that I've already talked about at the beginning of this video? Well, that fact alone does not answer it. This is why this is a composite conclusion and not a singular one. And finally, there is no required carbohydrate, exogenously speaking, for human beings. Not one exists. The one macronutrient that is considered a macronutrient that is not required for human consumption is not the one that we are designed to primarily consume. That is inane on its face. It is silly. If you wanted a fifth tenet, you could talk about plant toxins. That's a good one. There are toxins in plants that are designed specifically to harm any predator, particularly ones that try to eat the plant, because a predator, in the plant's perspective, is any organism that threatens its life in any way. So those are the 5 central tenets of carnivore, my conclusion as to why I've arrived at it. And if you wanted some more information about my philosophy, my health/medical philosophy, it would be a final note, which is that all disease, all of it, is caused by external factors. The Western belief system, the Western medicine belief system, for the last century and a decade, is that all disease is caused by your body. In other words, your body is inherently flawed in some way. Oh, you're inflamed? Here's a medicine, a drug, that will inhibit that inflammation, that will prevent it from maintaining itself, from perpetuating. Your body shouldn't be inflamed. Let's shut it down. Oh, you have what's called insulin resistance. Well, that's because your cells are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Your genes aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we're going to give you a drug that forces glucose into your cells by causing the cells to pull the glucose in. Metformin, for example. This is dangerous. This is lethal. My philosophy is the exact opposite. All disease is caused by external/environmental factors. Our genes know exactly what they are doing. They have evolved for billions of years, actually, and they've evolved for 4.5 million years at least in our speciation. Again, if you include proto-humans that preceded our current speciation, they know what they are doing. Therefore, diet and lifestyle are the causes of disease. We know this. There are very, very few exceptions where you have problems with genes, which is where gene therapy can come in, and it's one of the few bright spots of Western medicine, because there are a few, and it would be silly to deny that there are a few. So, with that being said, I hope that clears up why I believe what I believe, why I do not trust this human nutrition science, and I very perfunctorily dismiss it, because it's not science at all, it's bread and circuses. I've written about this in my book extensively. In fact, it's the first chapter. If you would like to buy that, the link is in the description below. The second edition will be out soon enough, and I will promptly alert you guys as to when that book is released in all 4 formats: paperback, hardcover, audiobook in my own voice, and ebook. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave comments in the comment section below, or you can schedule a consultation with me about this. I am now offering consultations. Links to those are in the description below, and I look forward to talking to you then. So see you guys later.